all of you wonderful scuba divers out there, welcome to the Scuba Diving Magazine podcast, where I break down the latest scuba diving news and things that have piqued my interest over the previous week. This week, Jenny Stock, the reigning British underwater photographer of the year, has dived at Legoland Windsor Resort to record the completed makeover of its Lego City Deep Sea Adventure submarine ride, which is pretty cool. Garmin has introduced a new all-in-one watch-style dive computer, the Descent G2. Immersion pulmonary edema, or IPO, has been given as the cause of death of UK scuba diver Robert Bolton whilst on holiday in Indonesia in 2023, one of the relatively few occasions on which the hard-to-spot condition has been formally diagnosed in divers. And yet another tourist boat has capsized in the Red Sea, but luckily there were no tourists on board. So yeah, that first news story of a Red Sea liveaboard capsizing, it was making its way south from the Suez Canal towards the Red Sea resort town of Hurghada on the afternoon of the 6th of February. There were no guests on board at the time, but the vessel's 6 crew members did have to be rescued. The incident occurred in heavy seas some 100 kilometers short of the vessel's destination, whilst it was off what it was said to be the Middle East's biggest wind farm site at Gabal El Zayt. 2 boats belonging to the Gulf of Suez Petroleum Company, or GUPCO, came to the rescue after a distress call had been picked up by the Red Sea authorities. Personnel were able to pick up 4 of the crew members quickly and recover the other 2 that evening, following an extended search and rescue operation. The stricken boat has been named variously as the Tritone and Triton. It was reported to have been undergoing maintenance near Alexandria on the Mediterranean coast, although it's also possible that it was a brand new vessel on its way to enter service, as indicated in early reports of the incident. It's kind of mixed at the point. It's not clear whether it was a dedicated dive boat or whether it had even been possible to recover it. The news came on the same day that the UK's Marine Accident Investigation Branch reinforced earlier concerns expressed by the Egyptian authorities about liveaboard safety by issuing a safety bulletin for anybody considering taking a Red Sea dive boat holiday. That was really unfortunate timing for it to really reinforce that report. The document warns divers to be cautious when selecting a Red Sea liveaboard in the light of a list of shortcomings that MAIB has identified in vessels involved in sometimes fatal incidents in recent years. Yeah, it seems to be literally, I've said this like almost every week now, that it's happening more and more frequently. It's I don't remember a time where so many liveaboards have sunk or had issues in such frequency, and a lot of it seems to be down to their stability in the water. They all, for some reason, seem to be really top heavy nowadays and just topple over. I remember one news story months ago, and as they were boarding, they was the guests were saying how like it was listing a bit over to one side, and the captain said, "Oh no, it's fine. It's just like it's settling in or something." And then I think it was like hours later, yeah, it capsized. So I don't know what's going on. It's all very weird. But yeah, have a look at the Marine Accident Investigation Branch. I think we did an article on it last week. I'll see if I can include it in the description. But yeah, it is just, you kind of have to be careful nowadays about liveaboards. Do your due diligence and go for the more like established ones, the ones that have been going for a fair amount of time. That's they're well established, but not so long that they're like ancient and they're more likely to develop faults. It's that kind of Goldilocks in the middle that you need to go for. But yeah, it is definitely worth reading that report. I'll pop a link down in the description. In other news, an inquest on the death of a scuba diver in Indonesia in 2023. The inquest was held at Winchester Coroner Court last week, and Coroner Jason Pegg heard that the 65-year-old had been diving at a well-known site in Komodo National Park on the 17th of September when the fatal incident occurred. Bolton, who lived in Bishop's Waltham in Hampshire, was an experienced diver who had learnt whilst he was serving in the Royal Navy. The lieutenant commander had later left the service to become a criminal defence barrister before founding a financial advice company in 2016. He and his wife Michelle had been on a dream cruise, and on the day were exploring the Crystal Rock Pinnacle, which is a UNESCO World Heritage Site, which is subject to strong currents and popular with experienced divers for its marine life. He had been underwater for no more than 10 minutes when he realized that he had a problem. Bolton was said to have ascended quickly, accompanied by a dive guide, but with what his wife described as panic in his eyes. He had been breathing heavily and holding his chest, she stated. At the surface, he had suffered seizures and passed out as a speedboat transferred him to hospital on the mainland in a bumpy hour-long trip. Doctors diagnosed an IPO, but Bolton did not regain consciousness. He was later evacuated to a private hospital in Singapore, where he died 6 days after the dive. Michelle Bolton said that her husband had been fit, strong, and a sportsman. In a statement for the inquest, UK diving disease expert Dr. Peter Wilmshurst pointed out that the risk of an IPO, in which fluids leak from blood vessels into the lungs, was 13 times higher in divers of 60 or more years of age. Quoting the coroner, Dr. Wilmshurst, is certain that Mr. Bolton's diving accident was due to an emergency pulmonary edema, which resulted in Mr. Bolton's suffering a hypoxic brain injury. He recorded an accidental death, noting Bolton's diving experience, his rapid understanding of the immediate action was needed, and his attempts to reach the surface. So IPO's symptoms is always worth sort of keeping an eye out for. Signs and symptoms. So symptoms include a shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, which is probably why he was like grabbing his chest. It often feels like you've run out of gas or your regulator is failing, and that's another reason why previously it was hasn't been diagnosed that much, because you just sort of assume equipment failure. Coughing, with or without a frothy or blood-stained sputum, and dizziness as well. So any of those kind of signs or symptoms, just get back to the surface and report them to someone. Don't just like hold it inside and just go, oh no, I just wasn't feeling too well. Just say, hey, I had shortness of breath, or it felt really hard to draw breath from my regulator. We can inspect the regulator, but it's best that you sort of get back to the surface. Do it as safely as possible, but it's best to do it or try and recognize those symptoms as early as possible, and end the dive then and there if you're feeling any kind of like shortness of breath underwater. Onto some lighter news. The British Underwater Photographer of the Year, Jenny Stock, has been scuba diving in Legoland Windsor's resort to record a complete makeover of its underwater Lego City Deep Sea Adventure submarine ride. It's a popular attraction that reopens after its overhaul on Saturday the 15th of February, and it's timed to coincide with the busy half-term school holidays here in the UK. It features some 450 fish of 50 different species, such as Pablo the black-chin guitarfish, Homer the southern stingray, and Squeak the zebra shark, all present on the day of these photos. Lego displays include a giant octopus, which is brightly coloured, crabs, a giant treasure chest, all sorts of different things. The Lego, I can't remember what they call them, the Lego engineers have always been good at this kind of stuff. The ocean tank contains 1.2 million litres of water and took a week of constant running to refill salinate and heat. Jenny captured the scenes as head aquarist Josie David added the final touches to the intricately designed models. It had taken the brick builders, that's what they call them, brick builders, 2,190 hours, which is 91 days, to construct them using a total of 240,000 bricks. So if you're interested and you want to go visit, that will be open on the 15th. I don't think they'll let you into the water unless you do something really special for them. But you can still see all of the attractions without getting wet. And finally, Garmin has introduced a new all-in-one watch-style dive computer, the Descent G2, as a slightly more expensive alternative to its Descent G1 with adaptability for diver development. It's selling proposition. So the main difference, I managed to get a sample. A sample one a couple of days ago. The main difference is that the G2 has a color screen, and it's the same AMOLED screen as the Descent Mark III. It's a little bit smaller. The body is plastic, but I'll talk about that a little bit later. Quoting the Global Consumer Sales VP Dan Bartel, whether you're a novice diver or more seasoned, the Descent G2 is designed to grow with you, even into tech diving. Yeah, it's got closed-circuit rebreather, mixed gases, multi-gases, both nitrox and trimix, customizable gradient factors, you name it, it's all inside of it, and that's just like the diving side of things. Well, one cool thing is that it has GPS, which I don't think was on the previous, the G1, so that's quite fancy. The 100-meter depth-rated computer has a robust sapphire lens with leak-proof buttons, with a bright 30mm AMOLED display for easy reading. The G2 promises up to 10 days of battery life between charges in smartwatch mode. Yeah, it kind of depends on like what you're using. So it displays the battery life remaining, and yeah, when it's just like day to day, it's like, yeah, you've got 6 days left, fine. But as soon as I went to switch on like GPS, that drops to like 9 hours. So it's good that it's got a rechargeable battery, and there are plenty of like power saving like features on the inside. The battery life is pretty darn good for something that you're wearing constantly. It's got the heart rate monitor on it. And yeah, all sorts of it tracks absolutely everything. All of the plastics used to make the watch's housing, the bezel and the buttons are recycled from material that would otherwise have ended up in the ocean. Yeah, it's a smart little computer, and it's like just under £600. I think it's was it $700 I think I saw on scuba.com. Yeah, it's very affordable, because I'm not allowed to say the word cheap. It's got so many features built into it, and it's really tough for like competitors to even like throw their hat into the ring with something like that, because it's a computer. It's one of these like multi-sport computers that you can wear all the time, and it monitors your health and fitness levels. It's got like an instant alert, so if you have a car crash or something, you can set it up to like alert your loved ones, and it gives them your location. I think I read somewhere hepatic feedback, so it vibrates on your wrist, and that's really good at gaining your attention. Yeah, I mean, I've only had it I've had it 2 days now. I've only really used it properly for one of those 2 days. I took it on a dog walk. I took it in the swimming pool, and yeah, it's a tough light. It's incredibly light. I think I weighed it at like 65 grams, including the straps and everything. You really don't notice. It's not particularly bulky on your wrist. Touch screen as well, like the Descent Mark III. So yeah, this is really going to cause some of the other dive computer manufacturers to like up their games, because yeah, this has got a lot of features in it. It's not quite as fancy or refined as the Mark III. I do prefer that one. It doesn't have wireless air integration, so if that's a deal breaker for you, hey, it's not for a lot of divers. If you can read a submersible pressure gauge, then yeah, you don't need wireless air integration. Yeah, it's a smart little machine. I'm unfortunately going to have to send it back because I don't get to keep them, unfortunately. But yeah, the Descent G2. I don't know whether they're going to continue with the G1, whether they're just going to have, hey, we've got our G1, because that had a black and white MIP, what was that, memory and pixel screen, the old like LCD style screen. which doesn't use a lot of battery power, so the battery lasts forever on that. Or whether they're going to discontinue it and just run with the G2 and then the Mark III. I don't know, time will tell. But yeah, it's a smart little computer. It is little. So if you struggle with your eyesight and you struggle to read your dive computer whilst you're diving, that might be a disqualifier for you, because it is nice and small. Hey, but yeah, the G2 is definitely worth checking it out. The review video, I've edited it, I've uploaded it so members can watch it now, but it's going live on Saturday at 3 o'clock UK GMT. So yeah, check out the YouTube channel for that. Otherwise, as far as new dive equipment, we're allowed to talk about the new Apex regulator, the EVX regulator, which is kind of complicated because, so for anyone who's unaware, we have embargoes where we're not allowed to talk about certain things. They'll tell us and they'll show us things ahead of time so that we can get things ready. But then we have an embargo, which, okay, you're not allowed to like broadcast anything until this date. But then I was on Apex's website and it's all over their website. I was like, well, hang on. So we messaged them and they said, oh, hang on, we'll look into it. And then it was... I think the response was, yes, you're allowed to talk about it, but dealers aren't allowed to talk about it. Okay, fine, whatever. So yeah, the new Apex regulator is the EVX. There's two versions of it. This is the EVX 200 and the EVX Tungsten. The Tungsten has the black PVD coating, and this is kind of a replacement of the XTX 200. It's been a while since they've... done an update on the XTX range, which is just very, very popular. So why change it? But there have been a couple of upgrades. The first one is, if we look at the first stage is kind of a modified, what was it called? Was it the FSR first stage? They've changed some of the hose routing for the ports so that they're a bit more streamlined. And one cool thing, it is not very particularly interesting, but the dust cap is like built into the overall design. It's got the like over molded plastic, like soft plastic section that goes over the top of the first stage and creates the environmental seal, and that can then goes down the entire length of the first stage, and then it becomes the dust cap. You can remove that if you don't want it, because I tend to remove dust caps. I don't like them like flapping around. But yeah, I just thought that was pretty cool. The second stage, most of apart from like cosmetic upgrades, most of the changes is the internal like airflow system. Previously, the airflow used to have to flow through a spring, just like mechanically, which would create some turbulence and eddies in the airflow. So what the Apex engineers did was basically move that spring and then create a like a guide that smoothens the airflow, so it's less turbulent. It's still ambidextrous like the XTX, and yeah, it's pretty smart. There is an Octo version of it, which doesn't have the breathing adjustment. So it's kind of like the XTX 40. I don't think I've seen a name for the... Oh, it's just the EVX Octopus. So they seem to be streamlining the range, where the XTX used to have the 200, the 100, the 50, the 40. And was there a 20, or is that an ATX? So there were a bunch of different second stages and a bunch of different first stages as well, because the 50 would come with a DST. There was a lot of like, there were lots of different models, whereas now they're just sticking with, hey, this is the 200 second stage. It comes in like the standard version, and then there's the black tungsten version. The first stage, which I think is just the EVX 200 first stage, and then that's just that or the tungsten version, and then yeah, you just get the Octo. So yeah, that was pretty interesting, and it's nice that we were allowed to talk about it. That was about it as far as I say. That was about it. That was all the two big news stories or new dive equipment. So let's jump into some Ask Mark questions. The first one comes from Ahmed Mohammed. But isn't that an electrical hazard if for some reason you have an emergency or your dry suit tears or has a leak? Oh, looking at heated diving undersuits. Most of them, if it's specifically for scuba diving, the electronics should have some kind of waterproofing. Most of them will have some of them have an external battery, and then the cable runs to your inflator, or like a special inflator, and then the cable goes inside. So yeah, if your dry suit floods, it's not an issue. They're all like wet connections, and if there's something weird, you can disconnect the battery from outside. If all of your batteries are on the inside, then it can get complicated, which is why I don't usually recommend heated undersuits with internal batteries, because you can't reach them. Most manufacturers have obviously thought of this, so yeah, they tend to have like waterproof batteries and things, but yeah, it is a consideration, and it's a reason why you shouldn't really use like chemical heaters, because with the added pressure, you don't know how that's going to affect that chemical reaction. I heard one case of a poor girl who, because she connected her nitrox cylinder, her breathing cylinder, to her dry suit, and she was using nitrox to fill her dry suit, the increase in oxygen somehow did something to her heated undersuit, and it was a like third-party story, so I don't know whether it's one of these like urban myths or something. But yeah, apparently she got like chemical burns or heating burns on her. So yeah, heated undersuits you do have to be a bit careful of. But most of the like proper ones from like big brands should be fine. They've been through those kind of tests. Tom, I apologize. Sega. Hi, I have an additional question about storing cylinders. Can I store them horizontally, or do they need to be vertical? Also, can I leave them in a car for a few nights when the temperature is below 0 degrees outside? Can you store them horizontally? Yeah, sure. For short periods. If it's anything over, a week, then I would try and store it upright. It is just so that any contaminants on the inside are naturally going to drop down to the lowest point. So moisture is the worst one. So if moisture is given time to like condense down at the bottom, it collects, and then wherever that moisture collects is where you're going to get rust. So if you have your cylinder laying down, the wall of the cylinder is the weakest point, and you don't want rust forming there. Whereas if it's upright, it's going to form in the bottom of the cylinder, which is the strongest point. That's kind of where you want the rust if it's going to form anywhere. But for short periods, I wouldn't worry too much, especially if it's in a car. Then and you're like using the cylinders and you're getting them refilled, because every time you're using it, you're like stirring the gas up. When you're getting refills, it's all stirring it all up. So I wouldn't worry too much about storing them horizontally. I do it all the time. In sub-zero temperatures, you can get an issue where it can affect the seals, because the seals will often like contract, and you can sometimes come back to an empty cylinder because the seal has like contracted. That's quite rare, but it can occur. You can also get flash rust, I think, if it like moisture condenses because it's colder. So it's not great, but I've done it plenty of times in like really cold temperatures. I wouldn't worry too much about it, but it is something that you do have to be aware of. Mustafa Matwali. Do you have any tips on climbing the stairs back onto the boat in choppy seas or strong currents without breaking any bones? Trying to take off your fins whilst holding onto the stairs is a nightmare, and taking them off without holding the stairs leaves you at the mercy of the current. Any advice would be appreciated. Yeah, I tend to leave my mask, fins, and regulator in place just because, as you say, if you do fall in, then at least you're in a good position. All of your equipment's there. You can breathe, you can see, you can move. Whereas if you remove your fins, then yeah, it feels really weird moving your legs in a dry suit without any fins in the water. So I usually keep them on. I mean, if the ladder or whatever you're climbing up doesn't accommodate fins, then I tend to bring, I've got a little bolt snap with a loop of paracord that just lives in a pocket if I need it. And what you can do is at the end of the dive, when you're like attached or holding onto your dive boat, you can take your fins off and then loop the paracord through the fin straps, or a lot of fins nowadays have actual holes like built into them, and you can then clip your fins to a D-ring. So both your hands are free, your feet are free, and you can then climb a bit more naturally. Either way, getting out is a matter of like brute force a lot of the times, and like timing. So when I first hold onto the boat, I try and move with the water, so that you work out your timings that way. Just have a look at the boat and the ladder. You want to make sure that you get in time with the boat movement as well, and looking for any kind of movement in that ladder, because some ladders are hinged, and the last thing that you want is for any part of you or your equipment to be between the ladder and the boat, because all of your weight and the weight of the boat will pinch and break whatever's between it. So be very sure of where you're putting your hands and your feet and your dive equipment, because the last thing you want to do is get something crushed. Then it's a matter of letting your legs do most of the work, literally like 90% of the work. Your arms are there to like hold you in place. Your legs are there to move you upwards. So I will grab hold of the dive ladder, moving with the water, and then as soon as like both legs are on the ladder and like my chest is out of the water, then I start to move with the boat and just let the water move around me. Just kind of secure yourself with your arms. So you're holding onto the ladder and then your legs are holding you upright, leaning not as far forward as you can, because you don't want to like break your teeth on the ladder by like crashing down on top of it, but you want the weight of your cylinders to be like as far forward as possible so they're under your legs. And then it's 3 points of contact, so holding on with both legs, holding on with both arms, move one of your legs up, straighten it, and then move the other leg upwards to meet it. Then you can move an arm, then you can move another arm. Try not to move two at the same time, and just make sure you're really strong and secure in your position before progressing forwards. It's a lot of it is just relying on your legs to do the work, taking a break, getting yourself into a good position, take your time. Really, it is tough. It is one of the hardest things in scuba diving, because you've been in this weightless environment and now you've got 50 kilos of steel cylinder on your back trying to climb out. It can be tough, but a lot of it is let your legs do the work. They're the strongest. And finally, Hannah565. I want to start diving in colder water, but I get cold easily. I'm not ready to get dry suit certified yet. I want extra warmth on top of my 7mm wetsuit. Would you suggest a hooded vest or a separate hood and vest? And should I wear the vest under or over my wetsuit? So an all-in-one is best, because you don't have any kind of like break in the between them for the water. You're basically trying to slow the water down from flushing in. So if you have a separate hood and vest, yes, you have extra insulation over like both your head and your chest, but the neck is that kind of like failure point where water can flush in quite quickly. Whereas if you have a complete hooded vest, there isn't that kind of seal. So now the water has to go down to like your tummy. It has to flush up underneath the vest and then into the wetsuit. Should you wear it over or under the wetsuit? I think that's an age-old debate that's still going on online. Logic would say to keep it like underneath your wetsuit, but I know a lot of people find that it's actually warmer over the top of your existing wetsuit. I haven't worn one for many years, so I can't really comment. As soon as it starts to get mildly cold, I'm in my dry suit. So I think it kind of depends on the hooded vest. Some you'll see will have like glide skin or smooth skin material around the neck section on the outside, and that's so that it can be worn under a wetsuit. And if you look at the inside of most wetsuit neck seals, they'll have glide skin, and that's so that it can like seal against it. Without it, you've got this smooth glide skin material sealing against the like traditional material on the outside of neoprene. That's not a very good barrier. So if you don't have glide skin on the outside of the hooded vest, then I'd wear it on the outside of my wetsuit. It also comes down to how well your wetsuit fits. If your wetsuit fits you well at the moment and there's not very much space underneath it, then yeah, there's not going to be much space to fit a vest underneath it, and it might get too tight, which of course you don't want around the chest. So in which case, yeah, over the top would make more sense. The wetsuits, we used to call it a wetsuit system that I used to teach in. It was the Oceanic Shadow. God, if you remember the Shadow range, that was big. And yeah, you'd have I think that was a 5mm wetsuit, and then you got a 5mm shorty that went over the top of it. Used to confuse a lot of students because the zipper on the full length went down your back, whereas the zipper went on the front of the shorty, and that used to catch out a few students. So yeah, there is a lot of people online who say, yeah, I prefer it on the outside. I've seen some say for current, I wear it on the outside, but for this, I wear it on the inside, and it's like situational. I think the best thing is just to try it out, see what works best for you. But the one thing that like sticks in my mind is that a lot of people in the forums say I wear it on the outside and I find it warmer. You might find the same thing there. And I'm going to wrap it up there for another week. Thank you very much for listening, everybody. Links to everything that I've spoken about are going to be down in the description underneath this video. Remember to like, share, subscribe to all that good social media stuff. Check out our website, divernet.com. Of course, check out the dates and times of the Go Diving show this year, and buy your tickets before they run out. Thank you for listening, everybody, and of course, safe diving.